Welcome to today's meeting of the Housing Committee. Members of the public may like to follow @London Assembly on social media and use the hashtag London Housing for this meeting. Please may I remind participants to silence your devices. Our main item of business today is a discussion on the Mayor's affordable housing delivery. Before we begin, we have a few short items of business. Can I now ask our clerk, Diane Richards, if any apologies have been received?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for absence have been received today from Assembly Member Lord Bailey, for whom Assembly Member Garrett will be substituting. And in accordance with Standing Order 2.4, Assembly Member Cooper will participate in the meeting virtually today.
Great, thank you. Next on to direct declarations of interest. The committee note the recommendation set out in item 2 and ask if members have any interest to declare? Thank you. Can we confirm the minutes of our meetings held on the 24th of June and the 10th of July? And can I ask the committee to note the completed and outstanding actions arriving from its previous meeting? Great. And then just finally, I think, actions... Oh, no, a couple more. Actions taken under delegated authority. Can I ask you to note the action taken by me as chair under delegated authority in consultation with group party leads, namely to agree a letter to the Mayor regarding financing housing in London, our Towards a New London Plan consultation response, and our letter to the Mayor on accessible housing in London. Noting, great, yep, thank you. And to note the response from the Mayor of London to the committee's Expanding Cooperative Housing and Community Land Trusts in London report. Great, thank you, everyone. So now on to our main item of business, which is the Mayor's affordable housing delivery, which I'm really excited to be getting into today. So thank you so much for our guests for coming. So I'd like to welcome our guests to the chamber. So we've got Tim Steer, Executive Director of Housing and Land for the GLA, the Greater London Authority, Tom Copley, our Deputy Mayor for Housing and Residential Development, Heather Duman, Head of Area South Housing and Land, GLA, and remotely Tajmina Jetha, Head of Programme Management for Housing and Land for the GLA. So thank you everyone for coming. As I was saying just before we started, we do have lots of questions, so we are going to try and keep moving. And I'm going to kick us off. So this is about the Affordable Homes Programme 2016 to 2023. And Tom, I'll come to you first. So what are your biggest challenges to ensuring homes under the 2016 to 23 programme are completed? Yeah.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning to the committee. I'll start with some context. We're very proud of, well, I'm very proud of the Mayor's strong record in terms of affordable housing and housing delivery. Before the pandemic, London was completing more total new homes than at any time since the 1930s. When Sadiq became Mayor, there were just 3 homes for social rent, just 3 in City Hall's pipeline. And by the Mayor's second term, more than 15,000 homes at social rent levels had started on site. He smashed the affordable housing target by starting more than 116,000 affordable homes. And in the last year, we have seen now some green shoots of recovery with a 70% rise in affordable housing starts. And indeed, in recent years, completions, affordable housing completions across all of City Hall's programmes have been between 10 and 14,000 per year. Moving on to the challenges, which is at the core of your question, there has been an enormously challenging economic context in the last few years that have affected the UK in general, but also London specifically. So record materials costs, partly as a result of the war in Ukraine, and increasing labour costs, partly resulting from Brexit. We've had 14 years of disinterest and low investment from the last government in social and affordable housing, and in the housing sector, the social housing sector in general, which has reduced their capacity to scale up development. And high interest rates have affected both supply in terms of the cost of borrowing for housing providers, but also buyers in terms of mortgage costs as well. But there's a few very specific challenges that are hurting London in particular as a result partly of the nature of our built environment. So whilst the Mayor absolutely he called for and supports the principle of the building safety regulator, the way it was set up by the previous government has led to absolutely unacceptable delays in terms of developers even be able to get a spade in the ground at what's called Gateway 2. Thankfully, this government has begun the process of reforming the BSR, putting new leadership in place, but we do expect that to improve. London's development is also overwhelmingly reliant on brownfield land and on transport connections, which requires investment both in remediation of those sites and indeed in terms of transport infrastructure. And then developing flats is more expensive and uncertain than houses, so that has been particularly affected, by high interest rates. So flatter development in London makes up 96% of our new homes, compared, I think, to 17% in the rest of the country. But we are taking action, working with the new government to address this. We, of course, very much welcome not just the Affordable Homes Programme settlement, but the wider package of measures that we had been calling for, that the government announced in the spending review. The Mayor is taking tough decisions in terms of building now on the Green Belt, in terms of a commitment to streamline the next London plan to make sure it is absolutely focused on housing delivery and economic growth, in terms of funding social rent more effectively.
We will come on to those. I'm just going to keep us on the 20. Yeah, the 1623. Sorry, it's just we've got more questions that will come on to all of those bits later. But yeah, just I suppose we're really aware that there's the remaining 40,157 homes that need to be completed as part of the 2016-23 programme. So it's how are you balancing that work with the new homes in the 21-26 programme?
Well, the team, I think, are very effectively managing 2 programmes at the moment, and soon to be 3 programmes. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, we are now seeing across all of the Mayor's programmes, including the 16 to 23 programme, we've averaged between 10 and 14,000 completions consistently over the last few years. Starts have been challenging under the 21-26 programme for the reasons that I have just set out. But I'm very confident we are going to see a recovery on that front in the next few years. The messages that I'm hearing from the team is that there is now much more interest in bidding into the programme, in part because of the very welcome package that was announced by the government, which gives more confidence to social landlords in terms of their own financial capacity. I'm very confident that the team is effectively managing the delivery of these 2 programmes.
Great, and just a final one for me before we move on to others, and do invite other people to join, to respond as well. So you previously told us that most of the homes under 2016-23 would be completed by 2029. Is that still the case?
I think that we expect the bulk of them to be completed by 2030. I think there are a few projects that do slip a bit later than that, and this is where I look at Heather for the absolute Heather or Tajmina for the absolute answer on this one.
Yes, we do have some projects that are extending into the early 2030s. These were our longer term projects that we've still got to deliver. They have been delivering along since 2016, but we've got the tail end of some completions early in the 2030s.
Do you have more specific, because obviously Tom just said the bulk by 2030 would be good to know.
Yep.
Kind of how, a percentage or how many, and then how far into the 2030s?
Yeah, so I think the last one is 2033. I think I was just looking at yesterday, I think there are about 4 projects that are remaining into the early 30s. This will be things like the housing zones, which are really large-scale developments that started early, but with completions later on. So a very small number, a few thousand off the top of my head. And a handful of projects from primarily the Housing Zone programme.
Great, thank you for that detail. It's really helpful. I'm going to go to Assemblymember Boff.
Mr. Copley, you criticised the way in which the building regulator was set up. What was wrong with it?
I think it didn't have the capacity, first of all, that was needed. And I'm pleased to see, I think there's been an announcement recently that the regulator is taking on 100 new officers in order to improve capacity. But I think there are also more fundamental issues with it. I think in terms of the amount of detail that is being required to be given at what's called Gateway 2. This is before spades can even go into the ground. Obviously, there's some very fundamental things that need to be established before start on site, not least things like making sure that there isn't any combustible materials on these buildings. But the level of detail that was being requested at Gateway 2, I think there's a strong view that some of those things could actually be dealt with at the building control stage, rather than before you can even build the foundations.
So the criticism is not what is in the regulations; it's the way in which they're executed. Or are you criticising the regulations themselves?
I certainly think that the way the BSR has perhaps interpreted those regulations so far has not been particularly helpful, and I'm very, very hopeful that the new leadership, which of course is Andy Rowe and Charlie Pugsley from the LFB, formerly of the LFB, are going to be able to make the necessary changes.
So this isn't a criticism of the two staircase rule?
It's not a criticism of the two staircase rule. They're very separate issues.
Sure. That's fine. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Over to Assemblymember Small-Edwards.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, panel. Tom, there's a target of 17,800 to 19,000 starts in the current Affordable Homes programme by March 2026. I know that in the past, and this was certainly the case for the 16-23 programme, that the number of starts really ramps up in that final year. Do you think that will happen this time around, and are you confident that that target can be met?
Yes, we're confident that there will be the usual hockey stick. So the number of starts is going to ramp up towards the end of the year. And based on the information that's being provided to us by our delivery partners, I think we will be able to achieve the target range that the new target range that has been set out. It will still be very challenging. But I think you saw this with the previous Affordable Homes programme as well. There was a huge surge towards the end of the final quarter, where we recorded, I think, about 25,000 starts, which was a record number ever. A huge surge because, as always, there is a very, very strong incentive for partners to be able to meet the programme deadline in order to be able to access the funding. And as I mentioned earlier, we are seeing increased interest from housing providers in delivering. And that's in part because of the package of measures that were announced by the government. Also because by adjusting the target, we are able to respond to the grant rates that partners are actually asking for, and therefore they are more able to deliver within the programme.
And in the programme, it's currently on track, I think, for over 60% of homes to be for social rent, a tenure type which is, as you know, desperately needed in London, desperately needed in my constituency as well. Has that been a key focus within this programme? And do you see that 40,000 target for council homes that the Mayor set out in his manifesto by the end of the decade being reached?
Yes, we do think that we can reach. I do think we can reach 40,000 council homes. Council homes delivery has been, one of the particular success stories in recent years. Last year, we completed, I think, around 3,700 new council homes, which is the most, certainly the most in terms of the GLA's records. But I suspect actually you'd have to go back a very long way to find a year when London delivered that many. We'd have to look at the sort of the national figures that come out. But under the previous and the current programme, we started more than 25,000 council homes. We completed around 12,500 council homes. And what this has done has meant that almost every single borough now has a council housing delivery programme, and it's allowed councils to build up their capacity. That's not to say that councils aren't affected by, exactly the same challenges that are affecting the wider sector at the moment. We do need to make sure that they have the capacity to deliver. That's why, the sector is calling for example, £3 a week rent convergence, which has been pushed for by almost the entire social housing sector. So we do have to make sure that they have got the capacity, but the work that we've done in London sets London apart from the rest of the country where they haven't thus far, in most cases, seen that surge in council house building. The first part of your question was, in relation to the proportion of social
the
rent.
60%.
We're doing very well against that. We're above 60%. The real appetite for delivery amongst delivery partners is social rent at the moment.
Thank you very much. Back to you, Chair.
Thanks. Over to Assemblymember Garrett.
Morning. Sticking with the Affordable Homes Programme 2021 to 26, roughly speaking, I think that's £4 billion to build about 18,400 homes, which works out to a subsidy per home of about £217,000 per unit, which is how you're able to do this high level of subsidy, this social rent. But that does mean that relatively fewer numbers of homes are able to be built for the money. Is it really, even if it were going well, I think perhaps some colleagues will come in a moment to question how well it's going, even if you hit all the targets, is that really enough homes to make a difference?
So is this a question for,
yes.
for me? We'd like to be delivering many more, and that's why we very much welcome not just the new settlement, which is the largest settlement that London and indeed I think the country has ever received, but very importantly, those wider package of measures which help to put social landlords back on a stable financial footing. I think grant rates, and certainly I think the government would view the grant rates that we've been giving, and by the way, we don't really deal in sort of averages like that. We negotiate, the grant rates are negotiated on a case-by-case basis. We don't have sort of, except for in the accelerated funding route, we don't have set grant rates. We want to get the best value for money that we can.
So I appreciate you don't have a set grant rate, but you do have a total funding envelope and you do have a target you're trying to deliver. And so that works out to about £217,000 per unit, doesn't it?
Yes, but that doesn't mean that every scheme is funded at £217,000 per unit. The team do try very hard to get the best value for money. But I would say that I think that the government would view and the department would view the level of grant that we are giving at the moment as quite exceptional. And I think in a new programme, they would expect probably in real terms that to come down over the course of the programme. So while we need partners who are bidding into the new programme to come to us with realistic grant rates, we also need to be very mindful of value for money. They need to be mindful that there is now the long-term rent settlement, that there will be rent convergence at some level, that they do now have access to the building safety funds. Because I think there is and I think we would share this view that we would want to be able to bear down on grant rates over the course of the programme. And as hopefully some of these very challenging economic circumstances work their way out of the system.
But so it works out. I appreciate you don't want to talk about averages, but obviously I'm allowed to talk about averages in my question.
Of course you can talk about averages. Yeah.
As a mathematically minded person, it seems to be the way to understand the world. That works out to about 3,000 units per year. So 18,000-ish over 6 years is about 3,000 per year. I appreciate you've got a hockey stick profile where they all turn up at the end, but it averages 3,000. So if the Labour government's target is 88,000 homes in London per year, and the Affordable Homes Programme is aiming to deliver an average of 3,000 affordable homes per year, it's about 3%. So what percentage of affordable homes is the Mayor hoping for? 3% seems like not much.
Well, as part of the Next London Plan making process, we will be conducting a strategic housing market assessment. That strategic housing market assessment will tell us what the level of affordable housing, and it will, I think, break that down between social and intermediate, as the previous SHMA did. That will tell us what the requirement for affordable housing is in London. Our responsibility against the 88,000 target is to plan for 880,000 homes over the next 10 years, and that is what we will be doing as part of the next London Plan process. Which will include making sure that we have got the adequate land supply in order to meet that very high number.
But the figures we have say that even if you were hitting your targets on the AHP 2021 to 26, you'd be delivering about 3% of what the Labour government thinks we need. So, a housing programme, affordable housing programme that's delivering about 3% affordable homes. I mean, that's not moving the dial, is it?
Well, I mean, firstly, I would say this is the Affordable Homes Programme that was agreed and provided by the previous government, and that we now have a new settlement.
Wasn't it the Mayor's policy, though, to increase the subsidy per home and then to deliver fewer? That was something he haggled for, wasn't it? Because it was originally 35,000 and it came down to 18,400.
Well, because of the big change in market conditions between when the programme was originally agreed and when we could effectively start delivering against the programme, which was when Michael Gove, the previous Housing Secretary, finally signed off our programme. It then became very clear that partners were not able to deliver at the sort of anticipated grant rates that we previously had because of these very big changes. I mean, just take one of them, higher borrowing rates, for example. We also, Assembly Member Boff mentioned the introduction of second staircases, which is a policy the Mayor supports, but that did lead to a lot of schemes having to be redesigned. It has taken value out of schemes in terms of the amount of saleable floor space, for example, so it has affected the viability of schemes. The BSR coming in, all of these changes, coming in particularly within a very short space of time, very much changed the environment. It's a completely different world from the 16 to 23 programme. And that did mean we had to adjust to what providers were telling us they could deliver.
Wasn't it the Mayor's policy, though, to increase the subsidy per unit, delivering fewer units but with a higher subsidy per unit? He made a whole thing about how it was great that the higher subsidy meant that he could do things like social rent, which you've already spoken about the merits of.
Well,
but the downside of that is that it's more subsidy per unit and therefore fewer units.
I think, well, you might be referring to the Mayor actually returning affordable housing to be what most people would perceive affordable housing to be, which is not having unaffordable homes at 80% of market rent as a substitute for social rent, but actually delivering homes at social rent levels, because they're more affordable to residents and they cost the taxpayer more in terms of any housing benefit subsidy that those residents might be. They cost the taxpayer less in terms of any housing benefit subsidy those residents might be receiving. So the Mayor has been quite rightly wanting to prioritise social rent. This government wishes to prioritise social rent, and in fact the previous Housing Secretary, Michael Gove, in fairness to him, also wanted to prioritise social rent as part of the programme.
But the Mayor having pushed for that, that means that the subsidy per unit is higher, so the number of units you can deliver for the money is less. So we're looking at a programme that is delivering, based on Labour's figures of how many homes your party thinks we need, an affordable housing programme that's like 3%, 3.48% of the total. That's nothing like. I mean, when the Mayor's talking about percentage of affordable homes, he's talking about 30, 40, 50%. You mentioned 60% just now. I appreciate Section 106 tops that up, but this whole programme that we're discussing today is delivering potentially, if it works, and it's not even delivering that, like 3.5% of what your party thinks we should be doing.
Well, I mean,
the
programme that was given to us by the previous government. We now have a new programme coming down the line, which will be the biggest affordable homes programme settlement for London ever. But just to re-emphasise, we do think, the Mayor thinks, I believe, that we should be delivering genuinely affordable housing, and that a substantial part of that needs to be homes for social rent. That ultimately means the rents are lower for residents. As I say, it means that if those residents are in receipt of any housing benefit subsidy, that is lower. And it's a view that's shared by this government. It was a view that was shared by the previous Conservative housing secretary. We also, of course, within the programme, deliver and absolutely rightly homes, intermediate housing as well, and we are pushing for, within the 40% of the next programme that will be intermediate, the maximum flexibility to deliver a range of intermediate tenures within that.
But it does mean you deliver fewer, and so only a tiny number of people get to benefit, so it's almost like a sort of lottery win. I think that's the point I'm making. But thank you, Chair. I'll leave that there.
Over to Assemblymember Moema.
Thank you, and good morning to all of you. So just to follow on from Assemblymember Garrett's questions, I think my reading of the situation is that with the new package of measures from the new government, we've freed up capacity for housing associations and councils, crucially, because now they can access funding to remediate their homes. And, they're on a much better financial footing. So there is more capacity for investment in the sector. And we absolutely welcome the fact that the Mayor is working up a new programme which will focus on yet more social housing. But I just wanted to ask you, Deputy Mayor, you have touched on what's happened in the recent past around delivery of the 1623 programme, but I wanted to know what the new government is doing to turn some of this around. You've touched on the programme and the package of measures that this new administration has put in place.
Thank you, Assemblymember Moema. And yes, as I say, we're delighted with the new package. These were all things that the Housing Delivery Task Force called for. Which was the collective voice of the housing sector in London. We called for a substantial affordable homes programme. We got it. We called for a long-term rent settlement. We got it. We called for rent convergence. We got it. We called for reform to right to buy receipts so they can be combined with grant. We got it, and we called for access to the building safety funding on an equal basis for social landlords, and we got it. So, a big series of wins there. And yes, it's going to take a bit of time for housing associations to work this through and councils to work this through in terms of their business planning and their financial planning. But this is all very, very welcome, and it should free up capacity in the sector for delivery. In terms of other measures that we are working with the government on, the New Homes Accelerator process, which is looking at stalled sites, that's a joint piece of work between GLA and MHCLG that's looking particularly at sort of large stalled sites and what are the barriers there and how can we get those moving. There's a reforms of planning that the government has announced, which I think are very, very welcome. There's the reforms to the building safety regulator, which I've already mentioned, which are absolutely crucial for London. And of course, there's the new housing mission that we have launched jointly between ourselves and London councils, which crucially has both MHCLG and Treasury represented on it. So there's a huge amount of activity that is going on.
Thank you. And if I could, a particular passion of mine, the work that the Mayor is doing around homelessness and tackling homelessness, I appreciate that that's not directly necessarily something that you have control over, because obviously you are about investing in new homes. But I think overall our committee looks at the impact of delivery of social housing in particular, and just in light of the housing crisis that London has been suffering for the last decade and a half at least, I wonder if you could maybe touch on other measures that that will directly and indirectly have an impact, and the 16 to 23 programme's delivery of new homes and what that means for homelessness.
Thank you. Yes. So in terms of homelessness, as part of the Mayor's Rough Sleeping Plan of Action, in terms of rough sleeping specifically, we are launching a 5th Ending Homelessness hub. and moving towards a much bigger focus on prevention. We're also committed to delivering 500, what we're calling now Homes Off the Street, formerly Clearinghouse. These will be homes that are currently vacant, that housing associations have, where a bit of funding can bring them back into use, remodel them, and bring them into use as housing for former rough sleepers. And we're also hoping that there'll be a housing first element of this. And then separately to that, it's not a GLA programme, but the government's new round of the Local Authority Housing Fund, that's £900 million. That's for acquiring homes for temporary accommodation to help homeless families, which London boroughs will be bidding for.
Thank you. Just on the 500 homes you just mentioned, how much funding is allocated from that, and where's it coming from? Is that from which programme was that from? Sorry.
So the government agreed to reallocate I think it was £17 million funding. That's split between the new Ending Homelessness Hub and the Homes Off the Streets 500 homes.
Thank you. Over to Assembly Member Boff.
From the 2021-26 programme, how many homes have been completed?
I'm just trying to find the figures for that, Assembly Member Boff. Tim thinks about 800.
I beg your pardon?
Sorry?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Tim thinks about 800. We're just trying to find the figures, which are probably in your excellent monitoring report.
Are we going with 800?
It's just under 1,000.
Thank you, Tajmina.
Just under 1,000.
Sorry, I should have brought Tajmina in on this one.
And you, out of a target of 19,000 starts, is that correct? And of those completions, how many are acquisitions rather than newly built homes?
I'll have to throw to Tajmina on this one as well, I believe.
Yeah, I think I don't have the figures in front of me, but some of them will be from our council homes acquisition programme. If you give me a few minutes, I'll get those figures.
Thanks, Tajmina.
So only 997 completions from a programme of 19,000 starts.
Well, as I've said many times, Assembly Member Boff, we were only able to start this programme effectively, I think, in October of 2023, because the previous Housing Secretary did not sign off on the programme. So, you know, given how long it generally takes for homes to go through planning, start on site, and get built, it's not surprising that in just, you know,
so you're not
18 months...
You're not happy with that figure?
Well, I'm not happy that the previous Housing Secretary took so long to sign off the programme, and we weren't able to get those homes through as fast as we would like. No.
So you're not content with that delivery figure?
I would like that figure to have been higher, but for circumstances out of the Mayor's control, that figure isn't higher. In fact, circumstances largely relating to the previous, I should say previous but one, Housing Secretary.
So the number of starts aren't anywhere near where they need to be. The number of completions aren't anywhere.
Hang on, no. I'm not having this. As I said at the beginning of the meeting, we have in the last few years averaged across all the Mayor's programmes between 10 and 14,000 homes. And, you know, I remember back in the day, the committee only wanted to talk about completions, and then when we were doing very well on starts, and now they're much less interested in talking about completions. So, you know, I think we have to acknowledge that across all the Mayor's programmes, between 10 and 14,000 per year.
That's not a good representation of where this committee has gone. Starts are important to politicians and completions are important to those in housing need. starts are not important unless they result in a completion.
Absolutely, and that's why it's fantastic that in the last few years we've averaged between 10 and 14,000 completions a year. Because I think you have to take the Mayor's housing funding programmes in the round.
In terms of the starts, though, in order to get a completion, you need a start. And the starts...
Absolutely.
And you need a considerable number of starts in order to justify the target. Is that correct? You need a significant number of starts in the final year of the programme in order to meet your targets. Is that correct?
We certainly do, and I would remind the Assembly member that in 2022-23 we achieved 25,000 starts, and we don't need to achieve 25,000 starts this year in order to reach the target. I accept that the economic conditions are very different this time around, but the GLA and the team that we have here have proven that against perhaps the views of certain naysayers, we can achieve challenging numbers.
Because it appears to me like you on your previous programme, which you claim to have hit with regard to starts.
Well, we did hit.
Well, you put spades in the ground and then you spent an awful lot of time resting on them.
We did hit the target, Assembly Member Boff, and
and yet of the completions from the current programme, I don't know what the figure is that you're going to be advised, that you've really only done about 500 starts. Sorry, completions. 500 completions in terms of building new stock.
Well, as I say, we were only able to get underway with this particular programme in October 2023, and given, generally the lengths of time it takes to get new homes built in London, you would not expect in, less than 2 years, a huge number of completions from that programme. Now, we do have a completions deadline.
It's always somebody else's fault, isn't it? It's always somebody else's fault.
Well, I think. Well, what are these things?
It's the proposals
hang on,
that you presented to the previous government.
Let me respond to your question.
Problem.
I'd just be interested to know: was the Mayor responsible for interest rates shooting up, or was it Liz Truss and her disastrous mini budget?
No,
was the Mayor responsible for the botched introduction of the building safety regulator?
I think we should bring Tajmina back with them.
Let's get back to what I've asked you, which is about that particular reference to the previous government, which you reckoned held up the programme. Perhaps the programme needed to be held up if it wasn't sound. What was wrong with that previous programme that meant it was held up?
What happened was the economic situation changed, and I've been through all of those.
It wasn't the previous government; it was the economic situation. Fair enough. Let's get those figures.
As you well know, Assembly Member Boff, the previous government bore not an insignificant amount of responsibility for those economic.
I think we've gone over the context. Let's bring Tajmina.
I know there's somebody in this room.
I think Tajmina's got the data as well. That's waiting to come in. So to go to Tajmina.
Thank you. So under the 21-26 programme, we have 5,500 starts to the end of Q1, and we have just under 1,000 completions. And of those completions, around 440 are from acquisitions.
So that's right, about 500 real completions out of starts of 19,000.
Okay, and then Tim, I think, wanted to come in.
You're proud of the record.
Well, it's just
sorry, Tim.
Do Tim, and then we'll do back to the Deputy Mayor.
Just a quick point on completions, really, because I kind of feel like in some ways, given the way that the programme started and there were delays because of the pandemic and because of the changes to economic circumstances that Tom's met, yes, the programme didn't get off to the kind of start that we would have hoped for in terms of starts, but in terms of completions, once a scheme has started, it's in absolutely everybody's interest for that to complete as soon as possible. Our partners are desperate to complete schemes where they can. Every day that's longer in construction, their costs go up, and so you know, the team does work incredibly hard with partners to try and ensure that completions are kind of managed and kept on track, but in so many ways that is absolutely where the focus of our partners is. And so completions happen as quickly as they possibly can, given the circumstances they're facing with contraction insolvencies and those kind of things.
I agree with you, Mr. Steer, which is why it should concentrate the mind to start as early as possible rather than waiting around for a few years. Thank you, Chair.
Oh, I mean, that is a absolutely ridiculous comment to make. The sector has been buffeted by unprecedented challenges. We have been doing everything that we can in order to respond to what the sector is saying to us. And actually part of that was adjusting the target so that we can then provide more support through grant in order that they can actually deliver. We have been very, very responsive to what partners are saying to us. And through the next London Plan process, we are going to be very, very responsive to what the broader sector is saying to us as well.
Thank you for setting out that context. I think that was helpful to scrutinise and understand the wider picture. I'm just going to go to Assembly Member Cooper online for a quick question.
Thanks very much, Chair. Just apropos of the issue of the delay in starting to build the programme, which I do appreciate what you're saying about the normal amount of time that it takes to build an ordinary construction. The much lamented and now lost to us Nikki Gavron did a whole report on modern methods of construction and off-strike construction. And obviously, if you do that kind of building, you can reduce the 8 months to 8 weeks in terms of getting something built. Is that something that we have, we still don't seem to have moved into doing that in any great amount. Is this now perhaps the time to be thinking of, being able to build really, really, really good quality, very quick modern method of construction buildings off-site and then getting them installed quickly?
It's a very good point, Leonie, and it's been something that there have been real attempts to get off the ground over the last few years. There have been some impediments, though. One of the key ones has been creating that pipeline and that certainty for MMC providers. I think there is a huge opportunity, actually, with the new towns proposals. Very keen that we get at least one new town in London. I think that there is huge opportunity there. You've got a whole area where you need to deliver a large number of homes. Couldn't that generate a significant pipeline of MMC? So particularly in the new towns context, I'm actually very, very interested in this. I do go and visit quite a lot of MMC developments in London. I mean, there are perhaps more than people think, and obviously looking at them from the outside, you wouldn't necessarily be able to tell because they look just like traditional builds. So there is quite a bit going up in London, but you're absolutely right. There is an opportunity here, and I think if we can generate that pipeline, and new towns will be a great way to do that, we could expand the amount of MMC that is used in London.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. That was helpful. Assembly Member Boff.
Just to say, I'm pleased Assembly Member Cooper has raised MMC. This committee did a lot of work on it. The trouble is the Mayor didn't take much action on it. So, but let's go to my next question. Mr. Steer. If grant funding is left over from 2021-26 programme, will it have to be returned to the government?
Yes, I mean, in theory, that is a possibility that could happen. I think, our expectation is that we'll fully spend under the programme. As has kind of been said already, and Heather might want to kind of provide a bit more insight into this, but, we're in really intensive conversations with all of our partners about their programmes as we move to the end of the programme. The pipeline is looking reasonably healthy given where we've been and the difficulties that we've faced. We still have some choices that we're able to make, and so we're able to kind of fund what we feel are the best value schemes that are in front of us. And so our expectation is, our hope is, and we're working very hard for this, is that we'll move towards the end of the programme, fully spending it and meeting the target.
Thank you.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
can I-
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. I just wanted to add that, by way of sort of local colour, I just wanted to pay tribute to some of the councils that are working in South London, who at the beginning of this programme were absolutely buffeted by all of the things that we've talked about. But each of them have done massive sort of asset management reviews, put together new types of procurement and modelling on sites that they've never done before, got that through their political masters, got the procurement through, and right now, they're formalising that out into named projects that they can start in the latter part of the programme. So I just wanted to be clear that people are working so hard, and you will start to see the fruits of that over the next few months.
That's really helpful. Thank you. Assembly Member Moema.
Thanks. So under the 26 to 36 programme, it's very happily a 10-year programme instead of 3, the GLA has been allocated 11.7 billion. Do you think that that's enough to meet the need in London? It's about 30% of the funding and 40, am I correct? But our guests last time mentioned that they thought that London's share should be higher. So I just wondered what your view is on that.
Well, I think you'd always expect me to say that London should have more, but we very much welcome this settlement, which is, as I said before, the largest settlement that London has ever received. But more importantly, it sits within that wider context of the various changes that have been announced that will make a significant improvement to the finances and therefore the capacity of our social housing delivery partners. So yes, we very much welcome it. I would add, and the Mayor's been very clear about this as well, we do need the investment in infrastructure in London, and here I'm thinking, specifically about the DLR extension. We do need the investment into that. I mean, that alone would unlock 30,000 homes on both sides of the river, including a substantial number of affordable homes. But overall, in terms of the Affordable Homes Programme settlement, we think it's a very positive one for London.
Thanks. And this next one is to both you, Tom, but also Tim. So the settlement, along with other government policy changes, matched many, not all, but many of the Mayor's long-term demands. How is the GLA involved in setting the allocation for London and the wider approach to housing delivery?
When you say setting the allocation, do you mean the allocation of the 11.7 billion?
Yes, the funding to us, yeah.
Yeah, so we will be launching a prospectus, I think, in October. I think that's the aim.
Yeah, I think the question was about the initial allocation of the 11.72.
Okay, so the 39 billion
yes.
That was allocated. Obviously, we have had in this committee, but also the Mayor has talked about the amount of funding that London needs, and I just wondered, how were you able to basically get more cash from central government and the broader kind of strategic priorities outlined in the government's prospectus about more social housing? How were you involved in designing that?
So we submitted a very strong submission in terms of London's potential pipeline of affordable housing delivery to back up our case for investment in London. And in terms of the proportion of social rent, I mean, this is something where really ourselves and the government were very much in the same position. I mean, we pushed very hard for the previous government to move on social rent, which ultimately did happen towards the latter stages. And I'll bring in Tim. Tim and team engage very regularly and very closely with officials at MHCLG.
Yeah, I was just going to say, our engagement with the department, MHCLG, the ministry, on the new programme goes back at least a couple of years. So we did a lot of work with the sector a couple of years ago, particularly via the Housing Delivery Task Force, to work through what the programme should look like from their perspective, what additional package of measures would be needed to support that. And as you say, as we engaged very heavily in the run-up to the spending review on that and what was deliverable in London in the right circumstances. And we were really pleased with not only the overall focus on affordable homes funding in the spending review, but that wider surrounding package of measures, which is very much reflects the consensus which we had been talking to the sector about over the past, really significant period. Then there was a period after the spending review when we understood that there was the 39 billion settlement nationally, but not what the London allocation of that would be. And again, very intensive engagement with the department and via them with Treasury about what could be delivered in London with what funding allocation. As Tom says, we put forward a comprehensive case for that funding for London, and starting with need, but then going into delivery capability and the capacity of the sector in the context of that surrounding package of measures. And ultimately, we're, as Tom says, very pleased with the 11.7 billion settlement for London, which does provide over that 10-year period a real platform to build a long-term programme over and to kind of return to the levels of delivery under the programme which we'd be wanting to see.
Okay, thank you. In terms of balancing the funding that we have been allocated for this programme and the housing targets that London has, how does that kind of compute in terms of meeting that identified need?
Well, the identified need will come as part of the strategic housing market assessment. Obviously, we've got the figures in the current London plan relate to the previous assessment. The new assessment is being conducted for the next London plan, which will set out that need. The need will be met, will need to be met, either through our funding programmes or through what we get through Section 106 and the planning system.
Just on that point, so what need did you? So that's something that's going to happen now, the next SMAR. In the conversations of government, what need were you talking about if you hadn't had that document yet? What need did you present to the government about London's housing need?
I mean, I think in many ways the case was built more around our capacity to spend at this point. So, we knew that there was a 39 billion national settlement. We knew the government had some, important and difficult decisions to make about where to kind of put that funding. We know that in some ways, investing in social housing outside of London, where the costs aren't so great to build, is an attractive option for government. So, in advance of the new London plan setting out the detail of that needs assessment, what we were doing is seeking to demonstrate what London could contribute to the national housing requirements, and in the context of that spending review settlement and the capacity of our partners to deliver.
Thank you. It's just not used to the way that I'm used to projects working from an NHS perspective, where you assess the need, then you advocate for do you know what I mean? In that process, it seems like we've kind of got the funding, and then based on how we can deliver, and then we're adding the need in. It's just a different way of delivering a project. The government's priorities for the 2036 programme, how are they different to the current and the previous affordable homes programmes?
Well, in many ways aligned. So 60% social rent. I mean, that's very much aligned with the previous one. I think that there is a sort of a desire to perhaps streamline in terms of requirements on this one to make it simpler for delivery partners. And in terms of other aspects, I mean, they're still very much under negotiation with the government at this stage. So I'm not in a position to comment on some of the sort of broader shape of the programme at this stage.
And just to reflect on, I know we've had a lot of discussions about the current and the previous programmes, but there's some key learnings from those that have influenced your approach to this 2636 programme?
Yeah, I mean, I think we always seek to learn from what has and what hasn't worked in previous programmes, and to try and make sure that any future programme works as effectively as possible.
Have you looked?
So, Tim, do you want to come in?
Well, I was just going to add, I think the key bit of context the key thing I'd say is that programmes need to be designed for the context within which they're launching. And, the context when 16 to 23 was launched was very different to the context, as we've heard, when 21 to 26 was ultimately launched. And again, the context now is really relevant, and we need to make sure that the programme design reflects that. And I think Tom's point about some streamlining and a focus on enabling delivery in the context where delivery is very, very challenging is absolutely vital.
Thank you. And just in your reflections, when you said that you've reflected on the previous programmes, I'm quite interested in how we've kind of defined affordable and what's included in that definition. And I know we've had conversations about, and I've spoken to the Mayor about kind of build to rent and that inclusion in the programme. So have you got any reflections on kind of how we define the products? Yeah, well, I mean, obviously there's the social rent chunk, which will be the biggest chunk, which is, it is what it says on the tin. If you look at the other 40%, which will be intermediate, we want maximum flexibility to be able to fund a range of tenures within that responds to A, need that's out there, and B, what the market can provide. So, I would expect, of course, shared ownership to remain a part of that, but I would also expect, as well as London Living Rent, which we've previously funded, the Key Worker Living Rent product that the Mayor is launching, but also discount market rent tenures as well, where we consider them affordable. And in the context of build to rent, I think that's particularly important, because the way that a lot of build to rent schemes work means that the sort of discount market rent is kind of the sort of most suitable, affordable product. Although we do encourage and have encouraged so far that to be benchmarked at LLR levels. Okay, that's a helpful detail, because I know that in some areas they've the influx of build to rent has increased the rents in that area. So it's just how we're taking that broader look at the impact.
Just to add one point to what Tom said about social rent, in a context where delivery of market housing is very challenging and demand for market housing is constrained, and that's very much at the top of scheme promoters' minds. How quickly can they sell the market housing? Social housing provides a really helpful ballast to schemes as well. We know that demand for social housing is there. We know that the public subsidy is there. And so actually, in terms of stabilising delivery, social housing plays an incredibly important role, particularly at the moment.
Thank you. Over to Assemblymember Moema.
No problem. So to all of you, to what extent would you want to see delivery targets based on bedroom size rather than units?
I think in practice that's quite challenging, Assemblymember Moema, particularly when there will definitely be a sort of global target for units. I think trying then to have a sort of sub-target within that for family housing for a grant funding programme, I think is tricky. I think the right place for the establishment of how much family housing should be required is the planning process, because I think it is up to boroughs, to determine, what their local needs and local requirements are. But also, housing associations will be very alive to the needs of their residents and the particular bedroom mix that is required. Again, I come back to this sort of point around streamlining as well. I think we want to avoid kind of layering on too many requirements in this particular programme.
And just generally, we've had briefings and we're aware that London as a city, its population is actually ageing, and I wonder what in terms of designing the programme, how we might balance what I would anticipate, I don't know, might come forward in terms of requirements around 1- 2-bedroom homes for people to downsize or to kind of break up student housing into normal kind of individual units versus a broader need for larger units. I don't know how that will come out in the wash, I suppose.
I think it's an important point around the importance of 1- and 2-bed units in terms of downsizing, because of course if you're building a brand new, probably very energy efficient, cheap to heat, modern unit, it could actually be very attractive for perhaps an older person who is occupying a 3 or older couple occupying a 3 or 4-bed social rent home to then move. And I know this is something that councils in particular are looking at. So I do think that there is value in that in terms of freeing up larger properties.
Thank you. I'm going over to Assembly Member Cooper, and then we're going to take a short break after these questions.
Hi. Thanks very much for the answer to the previous question. Could I just ask you, I mean, you made a glancing reference to the fact that the Housing Minister has changed. In your opinion, do you think, and this is mainly to the Deputy Mayor, but Tim Smear may have a view on it as well, do you think having somebody who's been the leader of an inner London council for quite a number of years before going into Parliament and is now a London MP. I mean, we got almost 30% of the 39 billion allocated anyway, because obviously there is such obvious need in London. But do you think that sort of more intimate knowledge of the situation in London in the new Secretary of State will make any difference and be helpful?
I certainly would always say that there is merit in having ministers who understand the London context and the particular needs that we have in London, and I'm sure that Steve Reid, very much understands those from his time as leader of Lambeth. Will probably be very mindful, having been leader of a borough, of the impact of homelessness on households in London. So we absolutely welcome Steve to his role. I will say that I was very sorry to see Angela Rayner resign. I would like to pay tribute, actually, to what she achieved in terms of the affordable home settlement that she got, which is the largest ever, with that wider package of measures to support the sector, which put them back on a very stable footing, with the process that she initiated in terms of planning reform and the reforms to the BSR. I would really like to acknowledge that, and I think that she leaves Steve, a very strong legacy, which I've absolutely no doubt that he will build on. And I see he's already straight out of the traps, talking, about getting the country building very, very rapidly.
Yeah, I think we all know the impact on the wider economic situation that house building and people moving house and therefore buying new things for their new house can have on the wider economy. More specifically, though, another specific question relating to our programme. Obviously, across London, there are a number of smaller housing providers, some of whom have land that remains undeveloped in small parcels or sometimes even in larger parcels. But they can find it very challenging to be part of the kind of programmes that we often deliver across London. In your recent conversations with government, have you managed to speak to them at all about the idea of some revenue funding for some of the smaller providers to try and ensure that they can actually get on with delivering out some of these smaller sites that are less densely developed? And if you haven't managed to bring that up yet, is that something that you would like to see?
I am really keen, actually, in general, that we see more development on small sites. And in fact, I think that, we have to have a particular focus on small sites, broadly, whether they are owned by social landlords or privately owned, in terms of getting us up to that very, very challenging 88,000. We do, of course, have the Small Sites, Small Builders programme, which we're always very keen to point small builders towards. I think there is strong potential for partnerships. L&Q had the Build London, I think it was called the Build London Partnership, which partnered with smaller organisations, smaller housing associations, in order to bring sites forward. And of course, the government have announced various changes in terms of planning, which should make it easier both for small and what they're now calling medium-sized sites to come through. So I guess my message to smaller providers is, we need everyone to be delivering. We need the big organisations to be delivering, and we need the small and medium organisations to be delivering too. And we certainly want to have conversations with them on as to how best we can support them.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. From larger new town developments to the smaller sites, I think we do need to see it all being developed out, and as quickly as possible. Thank you.
I should mention, of course, there is the Lewisham's piloting the Small Sites Accelerator programme as well, which hopefully will be a success and can be scaled up around London.
I hope so.
Which also has an MMC element to it.
Thank you, Chair.
I'm just going to ask a quick follow-up, and then Assemblymember Garrett, and then we will have a break. I just was going to ask. I don't think I heard this in Assemblymember Cooper's question, but we particularly heard about the lack of revenue funding, particularly impacting supported accommodation for our specialist providers in our last meeting. So just wondered, how do you ensure that we do not lose this kind of housing in the design of the AHP? Just a quick response.
Very important question. We are very alive to the fact that if you've got supported housing, really you have to have revenue funding. We are in discussions with the government about it. We're very conscious that revenue funding is tight, but we are making the case that revenue funding is important for supporters.
That's good to know. And sorry, you might have said this earlier. When do you expect to get that detail to be able to share it with us from the conversations with the government?
I think it'll all be wrapped up in the launch of the Social and Affordable Homes programme.
Okay. And Assemblymember Garrett.
Thanks. So the new Affordable Homes programme, £11.7 billion. How many homes? You haven't said how many homes you expect to deliver for that.
No, the way it's going to work is we will have an initial round of bidding, which will test the market, and then a target will be agreed with the government following that first round of bidding.
Okay, so we know the total number of homes that Labour wants to build in London is 88,000. What percentage of the 88,000 do you think would be a win? Like 6%, 7%?
At this stage, we just want to maximise the amount that we can. We have to test the market with that first round of bidding.
Sure. I'm just trying to get, though, at the fact that as a sort of sanity check, because you're talking up how brilliant this is, but if the overall goal is 88,000 a year, if you've got 11 billion, 0.7 billion, sounds like a lot, but you divide that by 10 years, and if you're talking about 200,000 plus subsidy per home, you come out at about 5% of the total being affordable. That's quite a low percentage of affordable homes. I mean, that's the back of the envelope estimate of where we're landing, isn't it?
I think we have to wait and see, what we get from this first round of bidding into the new AHP, and then, we also have to take into account any homes that are delivered, through Section 106 that are not grant funded as well. There's a whole ecosystem here, which is obviously grant supported, but homes are delivered beyond that.
So if it does end up in that rough ballpark of my back of the envelope calculation there, will that be a success, do you think?
I think an improvement on where we are at the moment will be very, very positive. I think you'd always expect me to say that we would like...
Well, I would always expect you to say everything that happened under the Conservatives was rubbish and everything that's happening under Labour is brilliant, which is why I'm really trying to get down to some facts and some numbers, which are very hard to spin. I think if this new programme is like 6% affordable across London, is that a win or is that a bit inadequate?
I think it's not just about the quantum of the AHP funding. It is also about that whole list of other very positive changes that have been made that will increase the capacity of the sector. And the moment that we will sort of see, the first kind of test of that will be in the first round of bidding for this next.
So when will we know roughly how many it's going to deliver? Like a date? So roughly, what's a date of when we'll know how much this might deliver?
I think Tim, remind me, the prospectus is out in October, I think.
Yeah, so the broad timetable is prospectus in October, hopefully, if we can get there in terms of agreeing the key parameters of the programme with government. Then we're expecting to do a bidding window in the winter, 3 to 4 months bidding window, and then government, work with government on the interpretation of those bids, and then it'll be for government to set us a target when they're ready to do so. But probably, I would guess somewhere in the region of April next year.
Okay, thanks, Chair.
That was helpful. Thank you. We're going to have a short break, aiming for about 5 minutes. So 16 minutes past. Thank you. Welcome back to Housing Committee, where we are looking at the Mayor's affordable housing delivery, and I'm going straight over to Assembly Member Small Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to the Deputy Mayor. What do you need from the next London plan to ensure that it accelerates the delivery of affordable homes in London? And it particularly would be good to get you to comment on the review and the potential unlocking a select part of the Green Belt to boost the delivery of affordable housing.
Thank you very much, Assembly Member. Well, as I say, the Mayor intends to put housing and growth at the heart of the next London plan. That means that it will be a more streamlined document. We will be encouraging boroughs to apply it more flexibly, because we've very much been hearing the messages that the sector collectively has been sending about how challenging, particularly viability, is at the moment, and we intend to respond to that. I think that there is significant potential for the Greenbelt to deliver affordable housing, not just because it's going to expand and increase the overall supply of land for housing, but because, of course, it should, in theory, be cheaper to build on. As I mentioned previously, so much of the development in London which takes place, it takes place on brownfield land, which is expensive to remediate. That's not such an issue with, particularly, low quality grey belt land, which will be the sort of the particular kinds of sites that we will, that boroughs will be seeking to, de-designate. So I think that there is significant potential to deliver large numbers of affordable homes on de-designated greenbelt sites.
And do you think it would be credible to try and meet that 88,000 target that's been set by the government without building on the greenbelt? Is the first part of the question. And the second part is, you mentioned...
No, is the very clear answer to the first part of your question.
Yeah. And the second part of the question is, you mentioned about the costs associated with developing on grey-belt land. It's still the policy that it's brownfield first.
Yes.
Do you think that's going to be difficult to enforce, given what you've just said around the costs around grey-belt being lower for developers than on brownfield land?
I mean, I think it's something that we would always, want to encourage, brownfield sites to come forward first. But and that will be, the Mayor's position. But we are now establishing with the coalition of boroughs a Greenbelt review, which will then inform the decisions that those boroughs wish to take around de-designating sites for housing delivery. And as I say, we are not going to be able to deliver on that 88,000 homes a year, 880,000 homes for 10 years that we need to plan for, without delivery on some parts of the Greenbelt.
You spoke earlier about the issues that have come up with the building safety regulator. The government obviously announced their reforms and the new personnel that are coming into that regulator. Are you confident that's going to get through a lot of the issues that we faced with, obviously, London having a large number of high-rise buildings? It's affected us much more so than other parts of the country.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, it's not going to change instantly overnight. But, I've been, and the team have been engaging with Andy Rowe very much since his appointment. He was straight out of the traps. I spoke to him very shortly after he was appointed, and he was listing off the changes that he would like to see to improve the way that the BSR operates. I think, Andy has a very strong track record of being able to positively reform organisations. He had that track record at the LFB. And I think the announcement that they're going to be hiring an additional 100 members of their team is certainly going to help. I think it's really, really positive.
I definitely agree with those comments regarding Andy Rowe. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Over to Assembly Member Boff.
So you've outlined to us how tiresome it is to build on brownfield sites.
How challenging it is to build on brownfield sites. Yes, Assemblymember Boff.
Sound like you're very tired of it. But and you've got two sites in front of you, one of which is what we used to in London, which is a brownfield site, needs remediation and all the rest of it, or a former park. Which one do you think the developers are going to go for?
Well, who owns them? Assemblymember Boff, does the same developer own them? Do different developers own them? There are many brownfield sites in London which are already owned by developers who will be very, very keen to bring them forward. And as I say, through the changes that we intend to make, the streamlining of our next London plan, we hope to make it easier for those sites
is it not going to be...
But the fact is, Assemblymember Boff, we do not have, we cannot plan, we are going to have to plan for 880,000 homes over 10 years. There are not enough brownfield sites in London to provide the capacity to do that. So you have a choice, Assemblymember Boff. Either you can say that you don't agree with that being the target and it's too high and it needs to come down, or you have to look at where the land can come from in order to meet that. And the Mayor's been clear. We are going to find the land that we need in order to meet that. Now, I don't know what your choice would be, because the thing I understand, Assemblymember Boff, you don't like building up, you don't want to build out. So where do you want to build?
Actually, this is a job of us to ask you questions, and I'm
always interested to hear your take on things.
This is what this meeting's about, and if you don't want to answer questions and divert by asking me questions, that's fine, but we know what you're doing. The fact is that it's going to be, if you've got a choice between two sites, one of which was a previous park, and another which was a piece of previously industrial land, they're going to choose the park, aren't they?
Well, as I say, Assemblymember Boff, we need to be building...
This whole nonsense about brownfield first, it's just not going to happen, is it? You're not going to choose the most expensive option to develop. You're going to choose something where you've kicked all the kids out of the local park in order to make it development land. That's the option that you're going to go for.
I think we should move away from hypotheticals to process.
A total mischaracterisation.
Deputy Mayor, if you could just talk to how you would enforce. I think the question speaks to how Brownfield First would work in practice. Like what safeguards are going to be put in place to make sure that that is a reality. And I know that we're steering into maybe more planning questions, but I think
definitely steering into planning.
But that is the concern of the committee, which maybe we should take away. But I do share that as because I think it sounds to some of us like a bit of a hollow statement if there's not those safeguards for some of the scenarios that Assemblymember Boff described.
Yeah, well, I think part of the protection is making sure that where Greenbelt is de-designated, that is being built on the correct density, so not low-density car-heavy development, but good, medium to high densities in order that we're achieving the maximum potential from it. And the more density you build on it, the less Greenbelt.
It was more the safeguards.
But I think these are
brownfield first approach.
I think these are safeguards. Because the easy thing from perhaps a house builder's perspective is to build at very low densities, not achieving the maximum potential from the land, either particularly in terms of the numbers that we need to achieve, but also meaning that then even more greenbelt would need to be released. So achieving those densities, achieving a good level, as I was saying to Assemblymember Small Edwards, of affordable housing, achieving improvements in terms of biodiversity and nature, and it's worth reflecting on the fact that a lot of the green belt that is talked about is not accessible to the public. It is not biodiverse.
Our point is more how, if we're saying we're taking a brownfield first approach, it becomes words if people bring forward a green belt proposal and what you're going to say, oh, actually there's brownfield nearby. We're just questioning how it actually works as a process. But I don't think we should spend much more time on this.
It is, I think, a question for planning. But, I do think that by making sure you are putting the right sort of requirements on that development, you're reducing the amount of green belt that needs to be released, and ultimately that is a decision for.
We're just worried we'll
boroughs.
get to a situation in a few years where we still have brownfield sites that are empty and green belt that's been built on, and I think that's what we're trying in our questions to avoid. But yeah, we have steered into planning, and I think we should come back onto our questions.
Sure.
I think I'm back to you, Assembly Member Boff.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, I could half believe Mr. Copley if it wasn't for the fact that Enfield is bringing forward parklands, active parklands to be developed on. That's my concern, and that's what those are the choices. That's the kind of land that you will be asked to develop, and you're cock-a-hoop about that. I really am not. Let's get on to some grant rates. We heard evidence previously, which wasn't a surprise to me after 17 years of going on about it, that if funding were provided from Southwark Council gave us evidence that if funding were provided on a habitable room basis or with an uplift for larger units, this would help councils to deliver more family-sized homes. Will you put into place uplifts for the larger properties?
So we're already able, and the team are already able to take that into account.
Do they?
So I believe there are cases, and Heather's nodding, yes, where that is taken into account, because obviously we have to be mindful of the overall programme target. But of course, if it's possible to flex funding to achieve other important priorities, then that is an option that is available, and it is exercised in certain cases.
Well, obviously not according to the boroughs, which were complaining about it. The fact that you aren't doing that, and theoretically you may, but the boroughs don't appear to agree with you.
As I say, it is possible, but we do have to be mindful that if you flex too much on a particular scheme, then you're not going to hit the overall target, and then I'll be coming to this committee and you'll be saying, well, the mayor's failed to hit his target.
Can people live in targets?
Sorry?
Can people live in targets?
People need to live in the homes that we're providing, and as I was saying, I think in response to another Assembly Member, Assembly Member Moema earlier, by delivering 1- and 2-bed homes, you are providing homes that people who are under-occupying larger homes can downsize to, and therefore you are freeing up family-sized housing. And can I just make one other point?
On the housing committee, that every time you go through the figures and that argument's used, and you look at that, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. You can provide as many 1- and 2-bedroom flats as you like, and there would still be over-occupation. There would still be crowding in homes.
One other point. I would refer you to the committee's own report on this, which shows, for example, that we are over-delivering against the strategic housing market assessment of need for 3-bed homes. I think it's we're delivering 19% of the programme 3-bed.
And you'll also know, Mr. Copley, that when we've had the boroughs in front of us and we've compared their market assessments in their boroughs to the strategic housing market assessments, the strategic housing market assessment says you need 60-odd% of 1- and 2-bedroom flats, but the boroughs are saying you need 60-odd% of family-sized homes. They just don't work, which is why I'm always very cynical about anything that comes from the strategic housing marketing assessment.
Did you want to come in, Tim, on this?
Yeah, well, it was just to say, in terms of designing the new programme 26 to 36, we absolutely want, as far as possible, to be able to support the programmes which our partners are putting forward, whether that's boroughs or housing associations. And, they are planning with their view of need in mind. I think that's one of the reasons why it's really helpful, actually, that government have said to us that they will set our overall target for number of homes after we've seen that initial round of responses to the initial bidding round. So, I think what we want to see is the extent to which the boroughs particularly want to put forward larger homes in their bids. We can develop an understanding of the cost implications of that, and then seek to ensure that the overall target is reflective of that and is appropriate in that context, so we can support those programmes as far as possible.
I would also suggest, actually, that boroughs will benefit in terms of now being able to combine their right to buy receipts with our grant. I suspect that will help them in terms of being able to deliver larger units. And of course, boroughs tend to want to deliver larger units, and you see this on the state regeneration schemes where they might be replacing smaller units with larger units.
Well, absolutely there is a demand, and you know that the London Housing Directors Group at London Councils wants to see you wants to build more family-sized homes, and they're of the greatest need, and they need the programme reflected in that. Not just to talk about a virtual possibility that we might do it. Why don't you love targets? Why don't you embark upon a target for family-sized homes?
I think it's very difficult. I mean, I've answered this question already. I think it's very difficult within an overall global target, then also to be then managing delivery against another target. I think that the place for this to be decided is through the planning system and is through providers' own assessment of the needs of their residents, which they are much better able to assess than we are.
So everything appears a bit too difficult for you, but I would ask Mr. Steer is whether or not you can improve the transparency of grant allocation under the next programme, so councils have a benchmark to compare delivery, and also that we can judge where those grants have gone towards supporting family housing.
I mean, we want to be as transparent as possible. I want to be as transparent as possible, but this is a very commercial-facing programme. 21 to 26, 26 to 36 are fully negotiated programmes. There aren't tariff rates. You know, that's a requirement on us from government. They want to see us achieve value for money in every agreement that we reach on a scheme level. The problem with providing more transparency on grant rates is obvious. You know, we need to seek to avoid escalation in grant rates in any way we can, and some level of confidentiality is inevitable.
I'm talking about, yeah, sure, I understand that, commercial confidentiality. I'm not talking about making them, using it as an incentive for them to build family homes. I'm asking for the information. And I don't see that it's that difficult to ask a developer, how many family homes have you built with AHP funding?
Well, the providers do report unit numbers, which we publish quarterly. Tajmina, do you want to come in on this?
Well, they must be missing out because family-sized homes have declined over so many years.
Yes, we do publish information on council homes that we funded that are larger homes. We have the bedroom breakdown on the statistics page, just since 2018-19 when we started to put this information together. Under the council home statistics, we have about 24% of completions are 3+ bedrooms.
These
and
are for
the
council
general
homes.
needs programme, it's about 22%.
When you say council homes, not the wider affordable housing.
So within the affordable housing programme, the homes that are funded through councils within our programmes.
Through councils, but not other registered housing providers.
And then for the general statistics, which would include others, it's 22%.
I mean, these numbers, I think the proportions are in your monitor, so I'm not quite sure what you're asking us to produce that we don't already produce.
Well, we need a benchmark to judge whether or not the right kind of homes are being built, and clearly they're not. But you know.
Then that's a planning matter. But in terms of, I mean, my understanding of your question was providing the information on the bedroom numbers, which we have and which is in your monitoring report,
which has declined.
Okay, I think the question, and we were asking about the grant allocation, but I think Tim responded to that. Was there anything else that showed me? Yeah, okay. Assembly Member Small Edwards, thanks.
Hello, we're back. We've spoken about the hockey stick effect and how a lot of the delivery of new starts comes in the final year of the programme. For the next programme, 26 to 36, are you looking at delivering the grants earlier so that construction could potentially begin earlier in the programme?
We want to have as much as possible through that first bidding round. I mean, one of the big advantages as well of a 10-year programme is it really does allow partners to plan for the long term. And I'm thinking particularly about long-term complex estate regeneration schemes where previously would have been split between several programmes, which creates uncertainty, different programme requirements. Having that 10-year view means that partners now can be planning, for an estate regeneration scheme that might be over the next 10 years, they can be planning it, for just one programme. I think there's a big advantage to that. And as I say, we want to get as many bids as possible in at the very start.
Thank you.
Just
You
Tim,
mentioned-
you wanna come in? Yeah.
Just to add to that, one of the things which will help us, I think, is that government's already made available a proportion of the future funding to us now. So we're calling it the bridge funding, but it's what government's called it a down payment on the future AHP. So that does allow us to plan right now with partners, looking at the schemes that they've got. Does this best sit in 21 to 26? Does it best sit in this bridge allocation, or does it best sit in the longer term new AHP programme? And I think that will kind of allow us to be most efficient in terms of bringing forward projects as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Tim, for that clarity. That's really helpful. And Deputy Mayor, you mentioned earlier that you potentially envisage real terms grant rates coming down under the next programme. As someone representing a central London constituency where obviously land values are very high, I think that could be potentially concerning because those build costs for, say, social rent homes are a lot higher in my constituency than they are in other parts of London. So will that flexibility regarding grant rates still be there for the next programme?
I mean, it'll all be negotiated. So what that essentially means in reality is there will be some schemes that will come through below the average grant rate and some schemes that will come in above the average grant rate. But I think it is important that social housing delivery partners in London do understand that this is the government's position overall, though, that there is a strong desire for grant rates, certainly not to increase, and potentially yes, preferably to come down, and that the wider package of measures that the government have announced should provide additional capacity within our delivery partners in order to make that process easier.
Thank you. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you. Assembly Member Cooper.
Thanks, Chair. You've sort of half answered this, but I'm going to ask it very explicitly. Are you considering long-term indicative allocations for delivery partners under the next programme? Obviously, the government has moved to a much more multi-year settlement approach. Are we considering that from the GLA with allocations to delivery partners?
I'm going to bring Tim/Heather in on this particular point.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start, and then Heather might want to come in on the kind of practicalities of it. I mean, as Thomas said, what we've been discussing with partners is we'd like to see as much as possible in terms of their 10-year programme in their initial bid. Now, some of that might be quite high level at this stage. They won't know all of the detail, but we want to understand their level of capacity to deliver and the level of ambition upfront, if possible, so that we can plan this programme in a strategic long-term way. And I think that will allow us to think about how we allocate that programme, allocate that funding to those partners, and to ensure that there's sufficient funding available for those programmes to be brought forward. I think what we won't be doing is making allocations, as has been done in previous programmes, the one before this one, is kind of making allocations and then transferring money over early. We will want to ensure that we are kind of making those grant payments as they're required and as the spend is needed, so that we're not in a position where we end up having to claw funding back towards the end of the programme. But we do want to be able to plan for the long term in that way. I don't know if Heather wants to add anything.
Yeah, just to say, I was chatting to one of our strongest delivery partners yesterday, and they were saying that they're entering into some really important partnerships with investors right now, and some of those are quite commercially confidential, and so the sites attached to those will become clearer over the next year. So that's a perfect opportunity for us to make an indicative allocation based on their capacity and the agreed board ambition, but that those sites will come through as and when those deals are signed. So yeah, we hope to unlock quite a large programme with that partner.
I mean, just thank you for that. That's really helpful from both of you. It just seems like such an obvious thing to do if there's an outline or full planning permission being granted for, quite a large, potentially even a brownfield site, just to get it going, to make, give people that certainty, both the delivery partners, but also the financial institutions, and surely are far more likely to come forward with, their share of support for the programme. Because I think we've explored in some detail this morning that the, 11 billion from the government is no way going to meet the sort of housing need that we have. And I just wanted to make that point, but I just wondered, we know that there's a load of sites that have been stalled. There certainly are in Wandsworth. James just referred to, the high land values and things like that. We know that there's been extra costs related to second staircases and all of those things. So do you think there might be some additional grant flexibility towards existing sites where we know that development has been stalled? So if you could answer those points, that would be great.
I think in the context of stalled sites, what's going to become really important will be the City Hall Developer Investment Fund, which is something the Mayor has called for, and now the government has committed to, and we'll be working through the details of that. And what I think that will do is enable us to provide different types of financing that will help to get some of these stalled sites moving once again. Tim, did you want to come in?
Well, I just wanted to come in on the first part of what you were saying, and totally agree with it. We're really pleased to have this 10-year programme. We were calling, and the Housing Delivery Task Force was calling for a long-term programme for exactly the reasons that you set out. And I think we can increase delivery through a long-term programme by providing that certainty and confidence. And one of the big things we've been talking to the sector about is how we maximise the benefits of a 10-year programme and really try to squeeze everything out of that we possibly can.
Yeah, I agree. I do think that, it also potentially locks in sharper deals and helps to address that bringing down of price, perhaps in some areas. But I think we all know that it's going to continue to be really difficult to deliver in London. So anything we can do to facilitate the work with both the delivery partners and also the investors, with multi-year programmes and getting things really going over a large number of years, the better. I think we would all agree with that. I'll pass back to you, Chair. Thank you very much, panel.
Thank you. Assemblymember Garrett.
I'd like to pick up a theme from a Deputy Mayor that you've mentioned, including in your answers in this section. So you welcome the fact that it's a 10-year programme and it gives long-term stability, and you've also talked extensively about the hockey stick, how nothing much happens for years and then it ramps up at the end. You can see where I'm going. You could see out this entire mayoral term achieving absolutely nothing, claim that you're still on track for success and it's all a glorious future, despite actually achieving nothing because, in inverted commas, the hockey stick will ride to the rescue. That wouldn't achieve very much for Londoners, though, would it?
Well, that's not our intention, Assemblymember Garrett. As I say, in response to a previous question, we want to get as many bids in, as much of the programme allocated as possible early on. We will want to prioritise schemes that can deliver early within that. That is always a priority for us. So, there's absolutely no world in which I'm just going, oh, well, we'll just leave it to the final years of the programme. I mean, we are absolutely chomping at the bit to get going with this programme and get delivering under this programme.
But you can't tell us how many or in what year it might.
Well, I mean, with the greatest respect, we've not even had the first bidding round yet. So, no is the answer to that question, because we haven't tested the market.
In 2 or 3 years' time, well, not 3 years' time, we've a new mayor by then, but in 2 years' time, you're promising you won't still be here saying, hockey stick, that's why we haven't delivered much.
I think, well, you have to, no, I won't be. I was just reflecting on the fact that a 10-year programme is very different to a 5-year programme. We've not had one before. But I think as part of that is incumbent on us and incumbent on me and the team to really push for that early delivery. So we are entering a new world, but we will absolutely have a focus on delivering as much as we can in those early years, because that's what Londoners need.
We will see. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. A couple of questions from me now on accessibility. So is the So it's specifically about accessible homes and wheelchair accessible homes, and is the 11.7 billion allocated to the new affordable homes programme sufficient to meet our accessible and wheelchair housing needs? You know that we had an investigation on this in June and heard the extent of the impact of the lack of affordable accessible homes for our disabled Londoners. So yeah, will you be able to provide sufficient homes with that 11.7 billion?
So, I mean, I have to say, I think this really does go into planning, and I think that planning is the area where accessible housing is best secured. And as you know, we've got requirements in the London Plan. I think it's difficult for us to put requirements within the Affordable Homes Programme grant funding requirements. I think, as I say, this is something that is probably best, secured and delivered at the planning stage.
I guess I agree that there's planning requirements, and actually we've had planning requirements to have 10% wheelchair accessible and 90% accessible, and they haven't been delivered. So obviously there is more we need to do than just have that planning requirement. But I guess the bits that we've been talking about here is the grant allocation, which we heard was a barrier to people being able to provide that accessible home. And actually what happens is the councils have to then apply for DFG to then kind of retrofit. And obviously that takes time, it's process, it's that additional money at that stage. And then also, as you were just saying, you're going to get those bids through. So will there be scrutiny of the accessible homes being provided in those bids?
So I don't think that this is something that we record, is it? Or have I got that wrong? I'm looking at Tajmina.
Well, yeah, we don't include all of the detail on the bids that we get on the projects that we have.
I mean, obviously, yeah, go for it, Tim.
I was just going to say, I mean, I think what we will be doing as we go through the bids that partners put together is quite like family housing in many ways. We want to support our partners to be able to deliver the programmes that they would like to and they need to deliver. In terms of accessible housing, they need to meet the planning requirements, and they also may have additional requirements beyond that which they want to meet for their residents, and we would like them to put forward programmes that reflect that, including showing how the costs of that need to be accommodated. And our assumption in looking at those bids is that they will be meeting planning requirements, and that those costs are built into the costs which we accept for applicability for grants. So again, if it's the case that partners put forward programmes where they want to go over and above the planning requirements, we'll look at that as part of that bid assessment, work with government on the cost of that, and see how much of that they're willing to fund us to do as they set the overall targets.
So just a reflection on the other two programmes and what we might learn for this one. Obviously, there is that planning requirement currently, but we haven't had the accessible homes delivered. So do we know what that gap is? Because if you've described that process, that sounds great and that it will be delivered. But obviously, we haven't seen that over the last decade. So I just wondered why that's the case.
In terms of why the planning requirement hasn't delivered the numbers required.
Yeah, and the process you've described, because obviously we would have many more accessible homes if that process was working.
Yeah, I don't really feel qualified to answer the planning question, but one thing we have seen is that we have had targets for specialist housing, for example, in the Affordable Homes Programme, and they haven't worked. They haven't driven an increase in specialist housing. That hasn't been an effective way of driving it up. So it does go back to that kind of planning position and the kind of needs and deliverability which are assessed under the New London Plan process.
And I think this leads to a question about data. So will you require delivery partners to record and publish data on accessibility of new homes by tenure? Because I think that's not what we have currently. We have it not broken down in that way.
Sorry, are you talking here about the AHP or about planning?
Yeah, under the next programme, will you monitor how many accessible homes are built by tenure? Because at the moment we don't get that information. It's just accessible homes, but not by tenure.
I think we'd have to take that one away, Assembly Member Assembly Member Garbutt. Apologies. Apologies. I think we'd have to take that one away and look at it. Obviously, we're in the process, of designing the new programme, which is a negotiation with the government. And as part of that, we will have to consider what data and in what format we collect. So I think I'll have to take that one back.
Yeah, and to bring in the voice of disabled Londoners, I think this is so
very
important for our for a community that being really kind of left behind. I think Assemblymember Boff wanted to come in.
Well, I am a bit outraged by what Mr. Copley has said. It's as though they've got no choice, and it's all the responsibility abnegated to planning. You are actually making these, you are actually driving these homes. Rather than just waiting around for the prospect of homes for disabled people, inclusive homes being built, why don't you push for them? Why don't you push for family-sized homes rather than just waiting for what the market does? And I find myself in the most peculiar position of you being in favour of more market economics than I am.
I appreciate that.
Don't you think you should use your power, the weight that you have, with the affordable housing programme to make lives for disabled people in London better? Or are you just going to wait around to be told?
I absolutely agree we should be doing that, which is why the team have done a huge amount of work over the last couple of years, particularly around specialist and supported housing, because we understand the importance of that.
They may have done the work,
hang
but
on,
they haven't got the results.
Let me finish my answer. We understand the importance of that. As Tim has said, unfortunately, when we had a target for specialist and supported housing, it wasn't actually effective in driving things. So I do think we have to look at other ways of achieving what we want to achieve. The London Plan is up for review, and I think that is one of the key places where this discussion needs to take place in terms of how that particular aspect can be taken forward in terms of the next London Plan. But we do, and we are very keen, and we do work with the sector, particularly around specialist and supported housing. A lot of work has gone into that over the last few years to try and address this issue, to try and address the lack of supply, unfortunately, that we've seen in that space over the last few years.
Thank you. We've just got, a few more questions to get through, but we'll try and, if we have short answers and we keep this moving. But, over to Assemblymember Moema. 17,
Slight segue away. I've, as you know, Deputy Mayor, and as have many other people, engaged with the Gypsy Roma Traveller community around their very specific housing needs, which there is a requirement across London. And I do have particular constituents who have been long engaged with you and local authorities in my patch. And so I guess my really basic question is whether or not you will consider setting a target for the number of council-run communal caravan pitches across London. Because I think one of the things that's happened is that there is a requirement in the London Plan, and then the, if you like, rational decision that a council makes is that I can put 100 or 50 units on this pitch versus X number of caravans, but the upshot of that is that we're not meeting those requirements. So through this Affordable Homes programme, I think the committee feel like that it's really important to strongly encourage local authorities to bring forward those sites and not say, and not defer to those sorts of decisions which planners and housing officers very often make.
So thank you for the question. This is a very important issue, and as you know, we commissioned a Gypsy Traveller accommodation needs assessment, which will be published shortly. That will show an increase in need for the number of pitches in London compared to the current figure, which was previously assessed in 2008. And boroughs will be expected to plan for delivery of those pitches. We're not looking at having a particular target within the Affordable Homes Programme for Gypsy and Traveller pictures, but I am very, very interested in how we can get more Gypsy and Traveller pictures because, frankly, over the last few years, I don't think there has been enough delivery in this space. So, as part of the design and the prospectus of a new programme, I am, very interested in what we can do within that prospectus in order to encourage as many bids as possible from boroughs and indeed from housing associations. I think housing associations should be delivering in this space as well.
So if I could just push back slightly, if there is no mandating of that requirement on boroughs to do that, then given that that's already the case and it's hard enough to get them to do it in the first place, then how... because with the AHP comes funding as well as support, the professionals in your, housing and land and others. How does that work in practice? What can GRT members, Londoners, expect from City Hall?
I think you can expect us to be pushing boroughs and indeed housing associations to come forward with whether it's additional pictures or entirely new sites. They will be expected to deliver against the new needs assessment that they will be given as part of the Gitana, in the new Gitana that's being published. In terms of a specific target, I mean, I'm not quite sure how that would work. Is the proposition that if a borough doesn't deliver a certain number of pictures that they can't access AHP funding? I'm not quite sure how it's envisaged that a target would work within the programme. I think that the best way for us to deal with this is how we promote that funding, how we, with my conversations with borough leaders and housing and regeneration leads, encourage them to come forward. And I have had, in recent times, some positive conversations with certain boroughs who are interested in bringing forward sites.
Thank you. I mean, I know that you've had, in one of my boroughs at least, that we've had some success, which is a good thing.
Yes.
I just wish that was kind of replicated across all of the boroughs where there is an identified need. My final
I think it is very, very important, and there's no kind of sugarcoating it. I think delivery of new pictures, over many years, has not been where we would want it to be.
Okay. And just, I know you say you're coming forward with the Gitana and the details of that, but one of the issues that that the Gypsy, Roma and Traveller community concerns have expressed is around meeting their housing need may be done by local authorities through housing them in permanent flattered accommodation rather than this kind of culturally specific accommodation through sites. And I just wonder if there will be further detail in your final document on that, because that was something that there was real concern about, and I think the committee expressed some concern as well.
Yes, I mean, we've very much heard the concerns of community groups around the Gitana. In fact, I met with a number of those groups just a few weeks ago. We had a very, very useful discussion. We do believe that the methodology behind the Gitana is robust. We appreciate that there, as with a lot of things to do with statistics, there can be other views about methodology, but we do believe that it's robust and that the real priority needs to be, and I think that the community also, want this, is to have it published as soon as possible in order that we can use it as the evidence base for the next London plan. And as I say, it will show across London an increase compared to the previous assessment.
Thanks. I really like those questionings about how we ensure that mechanism is there. Assembly Member Boff.
Mr. Steer, what changes are you considering to the accelerated funding route, or is it dead in the water?
I mean, I think the accelerated funding route was an important step to take at the moment we took it. We've, over the past few months, we've sought to work with the sector to understand what would be helpful to stimulate delivery in a really, really difficult delivery environment. And, you know, it was what we put forward last December was reflective of what we were being told at the time, and it was warmly welcomed at the time. And I think what it has done is started a whole series of conversations with partners about what might work in particular circumstances. And, you know, the key to the next, however many months it is until the end of March next year, is going to be that intensive work with partners on bespoke agreements around schemes. You know, the accelerated funding route was really only ever the start of a conversation, but it provided a slightly different starting point for a conversation in those cases, and we've taken forward a whole series of those conversations since it's been that route was published.
You're talking about it in the past tense.
Well, I mean, it was published in last December. It provided a new baseline, as I say, and it's, you know, those conversations are ongoing. And, you know, Heather might want to say a bit more about this because, you know, some of those agreements will be over the line, others are yet to be finalised. But
yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, it opened up a whole host of conversations, some of which hit those specific sort of 170,000 and 20% nil grant, some of which were slightly outside it, and we opened up a whole host of negotiations. Sometimes we had developers coming in with stalled sites where we asked them to pay for independent viability assessments to inform the levels of grant, and then we took those through our processes. So, and we've got those coming to our decision groups once a fortnight still today. So yes and no, very much current discussions.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Great. Next questions from me. So delivery partners have highlighted problems with the London Living Rent as a tenure. Has London, so we heard some of this in our last meeting, has London Living Rent been a successful tenure, and will it be included in the next programme?
Yes, it has been my mic is on. Yes, it has been a successful tenure, and, you know, an extremely popular tenure as well. And the reason why it's important is because, you know, there are many people who can't afford to buy but equally don't qualify for social rent, and, you know, who need to be able to live in London, and this is providing a method for them to do that. As I said earlier, in terms of the next programme, we are looking to offer maximum flexibility on the 40% that will be intermediate tenure. So yes, we expect that London Living Rent will continue to be delivered alongside the Key Worker Living Rent, which we will be launching soon, and which the Mayor pledged in his manifesto.
So, yeah, do you have a... You know, you've just said about that 40%. Is there a desire between shared ownership and London Living Rent? Would you like to see the bulk of it being provided as London Living Rent?
I mean, I think overall my preference would be, I think, not necessarily London Living Rent specifically, but taking in Key Worker Living Rent and other forms of low-cost rent. I mean, I think my preference would be that the balance of it should probably be those tenures, but there is still going to be a place for shared ownership. And some of, you know, how that 40% will be shaped will be determined by what providers bid for. I think the key thing about the Key Worker Living Rent product is that it will be, I think, easier for providers to deliver in terms of certainty over rent setting and things like that. So it probably will be an easier product for providers to offer.
Because I think that was, yeah, and it sounds like you've heard the concerns that we heard, that
Yeah.
it's a difficult, because this is a quote from someone from the meeting, is that it's neither one product or another. So they struggle to get kind of, yeah, investment for that as a tenure. So it kind of exists. And, yeah, there's this other issue with providers not wanting to fund a tenure that you could force a tenant to vacate after 10 years. So, you know, some real issues. Yeah, so have you heard those?
And yes, absolutely. But that certainly doesn't mean there is no place for London Living Rent and providers. There are some providers that are very keen on London Living Rent, and it really works for them. And I think this speaks to the need for us to be offering that range of flexibility, whether it's LLR or Key Worker Living Rent, or where it's considered affordable discount market rent within, you know, that segment of the programme.
Yeah, and it's about it being an option and a reality, isn't it? Next question is from Assembly Member Moama.
Thanks. The committee responded to a consultation, and we had some recommendations in there, and one of them around key worker living rent was to encourage the mayor, recommend to the mayor rather, to have an annual target. I think it was 6,000 in the manifesto, but so an annual target or a range of targets, and to report on that separate to other intermediate targets. And I just wonder if you're able to comment on whether or not that's something that is being considered when designing the next programme.
So we've got the overall target of 6,000. At this stage, I don't know that we will have annual targets within the next AHP. That is to be determined. But certainly in terms of reporting, I would envisage that we would be reporting, and I'm looking at Tajbina here, that we would be reporting on key worker living rent as a separate tenure within the stats that you get.
Yes,
I can see Tajbina nodding.
We currently report on London living rent, so we are looking to split that out once those programmes are launched.
Thank you. That's welcome. So my main question really is around whether or not the 26 to 36 programme, which includes the delivery of key worker living rent, whether it will also include shared ownership, and if all of the intermediate products that will be offered under that programme will be eligible for funding under the next AHP.
So yeah, it will include shared ownership, I believe. I think that's still going to be part of the programme. But as I say, we're going to be as flexible as we can be in terms of the rented products. I'll bring Tim in.
Yeah, and we got some additional flexibilities about a year ago, particularly on intermediate rent in perpetuity, and all the indications are that we'll be able to retain the ability to fund that in the new programme. One that it's been really important bit of work to ensure that key worker living rent and any other types of intermediate rent products are really investable and attractive to investors in the way that's been talked about just now. That we're very aware of the need for that to be the case if we're going to bring forward these types of housing.
This might be one for Tim and Heather. Sorry, Tom. But a few months ago, my colleague Ellie Baker and I went to visit the London Ambulance Service, and specifically it was their union branch, but they're young members, so under 35. And to say there are thousands of people who are in their position in London would be an understatement. And one of the conversations we were having with them was specifically around the housing need of them as a blue light service, but also young people that are working in London, providing an essential service and priced out of the private rented sector. We had examples of people driving in a caravan, sleeping in the hospital car park, and then going back home just outside to save that money. So that target around around 6,000 is welcome, but there's obviously a lot of people in different services that are eligible or are not, and I just wonder if there will also be discussion about which services are eligible to apply to qualify for key worker living rent, because that was also a concern about who does and doesn't qualify. You might have not junior doctor, they're not called that anymore, but somebody who is earning the threshold who is eligible, and somebody who's earning 25,000 who is an ambulance driver or a trainee paramedic who's not eligible. So I just would really encourage you to think about who in London is eligible, because that was a really key concern of, like I say, thousands of people.
So we have a published list, which we published a couple of years ago, which set out the Mayor's list of key worker occupations. Boroughs are welcome to add to that in their local areas based on their own local needs and requirements. So where they have an intermediate housing list, they can add in other professions as well. So that information, I think, is all on the GLA website.
Yeah, and I just wondered if it were possible for the GLA to, because I think they are included on the GLA list, but not necessarily in other boroughs' lists. So it would be really helpful if there is a mechanism that the GLA can encourage people to look at the rationale behind different groups of key workers being included or excluded from that list, because, like I say, we're losing thousands of people, trained ambulance drivers and paramedics.
I think all the groups that you've mentioned, I mean, I think are included on the list. So I think it is, everyone you would that you would expect, including those that you've mentioned.
I mean, I would really. Well, I mean, it might be a conversation for Heather and Timber to pick this up separately, because I think they had concerns that they were not.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Well, we're happy to pick that up with you.
Yeah, I think that's a good recommendation. Just one quick question on the London Living Rent. Do we have any data on people moving into home ownership?
I don't know the answer to that question. I'm not sure that's something we record.
Okay.
Because it's a 10-year.
Yeah, so we won't have got there yet.
Yeah, because I know that it's got the different.
Yeah.
But it would just be really good if we can track, because obviously that's one of its, one of its aims. Great. I'm going to move on to Assembly Member Small Edwards.
Thank you. To what extent has the Council Homes Acquisition Programme been a valuable part of the 21 to 26 Affordable Homes Programme?
It's been very useful, and I think boroughs have found it very helpful in terms of being able to meet some of their needs, particularly around temporary accommodation, which is where I think around 50% of the units purchased, this was certainly the case under right to buyback, have gone into TA, the other half of the traditional social rent. 15 boroughs have had allocations, so that's half of London boroughs are participating in it. And it's a very useful way for boroughs to meet this very pressing need quickly, because obviously it's quicker to buy a home than it is to construct a new one, and boroughs face a very, very pressing, immediate challenge around homelessness. 1 in 21 children in London are homeless and living in temporary accommodation. Boroughs are spending £4 million a day on TA, so it has been very effective, particularly in terms of helping boroughs to meet that very, very acute need.
You mentioned that it's 15 boroughs who've taken up that opportunity. Do you have a sense of why, what is the majority of boroughs then haven't taken up that opportunity to get involved in the Council Homes Acquisition Programme?
So it'll be a mixture of reasons. Some boroughs will be making purchases, but they'll be doing it through their own means, or they'll be bidding into the LAF, the Local Authority Housing Fund. Some boroughs are doing both. They're taking our funding and they're also taking LAF funding. There may be a lack of political appetite in certain boroughs as well. So I think that there's a combination of reasons.
And given the success that you've mentioned of the Council Homes Acquisition Programme under the current programme, is there going to be a replacement scheme under the next programme?
At this stage, I don't think it's possible for us to say, because the programme is still, very much under construction. So I can't confirm that at this stage, but we very much recognise the positive benefits that both Right to Buyback and CHAP have had in previous programmes.
And theoretically, if there was to be a programme, would you consider providing upfront grant to councils as part of that programme?
Upfront grant, sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, we provide the grant at the, well, I'm not sure, start on site and completion in the context of acquisitions. Heather might be best placed to answer this one.
Contracts, they get most of the money.
Exchange of contracts, they get most. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I would emphasise the next programme, and the government are extremely keen on new supply, quite understandably, and that will be a factor in whether or not there is another acquisitions programme under the Social and Affordable Homes programme.
Thank you very much. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you. I think there was, just another follow-up around acquisition of larger family-sized homes or accessible homes. So would you be considering more flexible acquisition funding to meet those conditions? Do you know? Yeah.
As I say, we're not in a position to sort of comment on what will be, a potential acquisitions programme in the next Affordable Homes programme.
So are you pushing for an acquisitions programme? Is it something you want to have. You just described it. It's really positive.
I think there are benefits. I think we also have to. There are also certain trade-offs there in terms of. Acquisitions are also important in the context of estate regeneration, and in the London context, we do need to be looking very closely, doing estate regeneration, densifying estates, and things like that. If there is a cap on acquisitions, say, in the next Affordable Homes programme, which has been the case in the current programme, we have to look at the balance between being able to support estate regeneration and acquiring homes through a CHAP-like programme.
That's interesting to understand how many. So currently, do you know how many homes have been acquired under that programme in estate regeneration?
I don't know if we have that information.
No. So you said it was helpful in the context of estate regeneration. What do you mean in that context? Like, how helpful has it been, or what does that mean?
So for replacement homes on estate regeneration, basically.
Yeah, so I think what Tom was referring to is that we have an overall limit under the current programme, and I think are likely to have it the same under the new programme for replacement homes. And so that it's a combination of acquisitions on the one hand and replacing homes in estate regeneration where there have been demolitions. So, if we have a similar replacement homes cap, there'll be some choices to make about, where we focus our contribution to that cap. And particularly on acquisitions, there are some other routes, as Tom's talked about, in terms of the Local Authority Housing Fund, which also provides funding to boroughs, and some other revenue sources they have access to too.
Yes, they can use their right to buy receipts, for example.
Just on the point you made about family homes, we've had one of our councils has got a CHAP programme which has got 1, 2 and 3 bed homes in there. They've found that actually they have been able to identify more 3 bed homes, and that's their most acute need. So they've come back and asked us to rebalance the programme so that it's more 3 beds. It's going to cost us a bit more, but we're going to try and make that work. So
that's brilliant. That's a really good way of it being used, and a really good example of it meeting need. I'm going to ask some questions about estate regeneration now, which flows nicely from what you're just saying. So the Mayor said in a response to a question that I asked was that 1,273 social homes were set to be demolished under the AHP 21-26. Do you know how many of these were classed as obsolete?
Off the top of my head, no. I don't know whether that's something we can follow up with post committee.
Yeah, that would be really helpful.
Whether Heather or Tajmina can offer some insight now.
Yeah, I don't have the figures to hand, but we can follow up on that.
Great, that would be really helpful to see. Because I suppose this is what I was just trying to get to. So how many of the social homes that are replacing the 1,273 homes are being knocked down? Because I think that was what I was trying to get to earlier around, So the ones that have been demolished, how many are being replaced?
Well, they'll all be being replaced because we can't fund a home that's not replaced. And based on what we see coming forward, what I see coming forward through the planning applications that we get that are estate regeneration, they're quite likely being replaced with bigger homes, certainly modern homes that meet modern standards and energy efficiency. So
say for an example, so on the examples where estates are being demolished, it's the total number, I guess. So of the 1,273 that have been demolished, how many do we gain from losing those homes? I guess it's the question.
So they'll all be replaced, and then what we also see, of course, in nearly all cases, is a net uplift on estate regeneration schemes. So I don't think that through our affordable homes programme data, that precise information is recorded, but it will come in the planning data. And as you know, in the London Plan, there is a requirement, an absolute minimum requirement for all the floor space to be replaced, and an expectation that there is an increase in floor space, and that is generally what we see. In fact, I can't recall a planning application that I've seen for estate regeneration where there has been any reduction. Even standing still, there's pretty much always, based on my recollection of planning applications that come across the Mayor's desk, there is always an uplift in terms of floor space.
And I think we've had that conversation before about the difference
and we
between...
will, just to say, be publishing, hopefully soon, some sort of more detailed information.
And I think that's what I keep trying to get to, because we just don't have that level of detail in estate regeneration around what's lost, if it's considered obsolete, what the units are, the tenure, the bedrooms, the floors, like as a complete picture. Because I think, as we've had a conversation before, it's just really difficult to get that information and really understand what's going on these estates. And obviously I've raised with the Mayor about the impact that this has on people's lives. And you mentioned the longer programme being good for estate regeneration. And I wonder if that means for the providers or for the people who live on the estates.
Well, both, because we have the ballot requirement, so in order to access the funding, a majority of residents have to vote for it. That means providers need to be offering, really good, fantastic quality new homes to residents. So I would expect there to be very much a benefit to residents here, who we have to remember, in many cases are not living in homes that would meet modern requirements, whether it's around space, whether it's around energy efficiency, and things like that. So I think there are huge benefits to residents, and the safety valve on that is the fact that residents have to support it in a ballot before we will give them funding.
And we've had conversations before around some of these estates that could be brought up to standard if there was retrofit funding available. So is there any conversations about that within your conversations with government?
So I don't anticipate that there will be retrofit funding within the Affordable Homes Programme. Obviously, I think that there are separate conversations that perhaps Environment team, have with government around retrofit. I'm on the Warmer Homes Board, which has a social housing element in terms of offering retrofit funding to our social housing providers, which social housing providers have agreed to put in funding alongside that. So there is stuff going on in the retrofit space that the GLA and London councils are jointly leading on. But in terms of the Affordable Homes Programme specifically, I don't, and I look at Tim, I look at Heather, I'm not sure that there will be a retrofit element.
No, because I think going right back to the 39 billion allocation from Treasury, all of the metrics that's measured against are in terms of new housing provided.
I meant joining up the conversations more, because we've spoken before about if a council comes forward with an estate that they need to retrofit, they're faced, and there's no funding available, they are faced with being presented with a demolish solution, which we know is worse for the environment, worse for the residents living there, etc., etc. So it's just how we're joining those conversations up.
Well, this is exactly a point that I've made many times, and I agree. I think it is useful for us to be, as a GLA, strategic, and I think that the involvement that we have in what Warmer Homes helps us with that. And ideally, providers would be looking strategically at their assets, looking at what is good to retrofit. What needs actually has reached the end of its useful life and can come down. And our involvement in both of these programmes hopefully means we can take a more joined up and holistic approach to that.
Yes, I hope so too. Just quickly, just on numbers and data, are the homes that are built in a regeneration counted as new social homes? If they're replacing, say, 100 homes, does that go on as 100 towards the target? Because obviously that's a replacement, not
towards
new
the
homes.
HP target, yes. Yeah. But in terms of the government's overall figures on net additional dwellings, I would say no. So on the AHP, they are new homes. In terms of a national data on net additional dwellings, because it's net, they will be netted off.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And then, but those are the homes which contribute to our current 30% cap on replacement homes in the programme. So the number of those which we can fund is limited.
Do you think there's an issue, though, with counting them as new homes under the Affordable Homes Programme? Do you think that's not being quite as clear about what's happened? Because if we've got a target if so in the 21-26 programme, if we do deliver like 18,000 homes, actually 1,000 of those aren't actually new, they're just replacements.
I think it's perfectly legitimate to count them as new homes. They are brand new homes. They are usually bigger than the homes they replace. They're modern. They're often replacing homes that have reached the end of their useful life.
Well, we don't know that, do we? Because we haven't seen the data on obsolete homes.
Well, I think it is legitimate to count them. I mean, they are new, modern, affordable homes that are, much bigger, much improved on what was there before. And as I say, you've got the government's national statistics, net additional dwellings, which do reflect the overall balance.
I think I'd need to see that. Yeah, it'd be great to see the obsolete homes element of this, and then add that to that story around.
And we also have to remember as well. I mean, estate regeneration schemes do drive, additional dwellings of other tenures. So, market rate homes, which there is a need for, of course. Which would not have come forward otherwise. So, you are gaining, in terms of total homes, a lot more.
Yeah, I know we've had conversations before about the homes you lose and the homes you gain, and the impact that has on the wider area as well. Moving into our last question, so it's over to Assemblymember Boff.
Mr Copley, this year we recommended to the Mayor that he works with housing cooperatives and community land trusts to acquire new homes under the Affordable Homes Programme. Will the Mayor take this recommendation forward?
Yes, we very much welcome bids from both co-ops and community land trusts into the current Affordable Homes Programme and indeed the next Affordable Homes Programme.
Would you be sympathetic to allocating land at Barking Riverside to a community land trust?
I would certainly be. I'm certainly happy to take that away and discuss it with the board at Barking Riverside.
There's plenty of land there.
Sorry?
There's plenty of land there. Yeah. And finally, the question from me is, will you be asking Barking and Dagenham Council how many homes have received AHP funds which have then been fraudulently allocated?
I'd have to take that one away, Assemblymember Boff. I'm not quite across the figures in terms of how many have been reported as fraudulently let, but I would have to take that away.
I recognise you can't do that straight away. The police investigation is still
is
still happening, but the police themselves say it's hundreds of homes, and I think it would be good for us to find out how many of those homes received affordable housing money from the Affordable Housing Programme. Thank you.
Just quickly on housing co-ops and community land trusts, you said you'd really welcome that, but I worry, and I think this came out in our investigation, that Londoners don't really know about it as an option. So I just wondered if are you active? Is there anything active happening around promoting housing co-ops and community land trusts as an option for Londoners?
Yeah, I think firstly, I regularly engage with particularly London CLT and indeed others like Russ in Lewisham. And then I think the other thing that we can do is make sure that we're very clear in our prospectus what the offer is for smaller community-led and cooperative organisations.
Thank you. We've come to the end of our questioning. I'm sorry, I haven't got my script in front of me. We've got a few more items of business to attend to, but if you want to leave,
we will leave you to it.
But thank you so much for answering all our questions, and to you, Tajmina, online. Really appreciate that. So if the committee can note the report of today's discussion, and also delegate authority me as chair in consultation with party group leads to agree any output arising from the discussion. We just need to note the committee's work programme and the Affordable Housing Monitor 2025. And the next meeting of the committee is scheduled for the 15th of October 2025 at 10 a.m. in committee rooms 2 and 3 in City Hall. I have no urgent business, so I declare this meeting closed.